Harry Osborn.
You're gonna want to see this. Oscorp. Get you
Under surveillance.
why? Isn't that the question of the day? There's something you're not telling me, Aunt May.
I once told you that secrets have a cost. The truth does too.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to From the Cinema with Mr. Beveridge. Now, some of you might be asking, who is this guy, and what in the world is this show? Well, I'm glad you asked. I am your most excellent host, James Beveridge, and From the Cinema is a show in which I take a look at the different movies playing at the JC Cinema, or on demand, depends, and give you my insight on each of them. Now, the movies I'll be looking at will range from ones I consider pure cinema gold to the ones that give me night terrors every time I think of them. With all that said, let's dive right in. Our first movie on the agenda is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Continuing from the first Amazing Spider-Man, it continues the story of Peter Parker and his challenge to live both the life of a graduated high school student with his girlfriend Gwen Stacy, and also the web-slinging life of Spider-Man in which he protects the denizens of New York City. This time around, we're introduced to the electrifying villain Electro, and his quest to take revenge on those whom he felt wronged him. And we are also introduced to Harry Osborn, an old friend of Peter Parker's, who is now the new head of Oscorp, yet is suffering from a crippling disease that threatens to kill him just like his father. Unless Spider-Man can help, of course. For me, this movie as a whole was a mixed bag. I found the movie to be quite enjoyable, yet at the same time, I felt there was some stuff that held this movie back from being, well, amazing. The main problem I saw with this movie, with the story, or rather, too much story, was that it was being crammed into one entire movie. This movie throws so much stuff into its story that it becomes very confusing on just what the focus is. One plot point, for example, I found to be unnecessary was the Rhino subplot. And while I did find Paul Giamatti hilariously entertaining as the Rhino, his scenes didn't feel necessary and could have been easily cut out. Another example of this movie having too much plot was the ending. Now, without spoiling anything, the ending looked more like the opening to the next Spider-Man movie. Now, I'm assuming that the intention was to suggest that a sequel would be possible, but this ending could have easily been saved for said sequel. The first movie did a better job with its story as it kept the narrative focused on different plot points that managed to merge into one cohesive narrative. Whereas in this movie, the movie isn't quite sure just what it wants to be about, and some scenes seem more like actual filler than actual movie. Now that you've heard me gripe about the problem I had with this movie, what exactly did I like about The Amazing Spider-Man 2? Well, a lot actually, starting with the two leads, Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Just as he did in the first movie, Andrew Garfield nails his role as the famed web-slinger. His fight scenes against his foes are a joy to watch, and his biting wit and humor make him one of the more unique Marvel heroes. He's always there to crack a joke even when fighting for his life. As his role as Peter Parker, his take is much more interesting and compelling than Tobey Maguire's version. And while retaining the qualities of Peter Parker from the comics, Garfield is able to make such in that he's more than just a nerdy kid that Maguire seemed to bring across. Garfield's Parker is one in which he is tech-savvy, a great detective in his own right, and even quite sociable around his peers. Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is also a welcome treat, just as with the previous film. She not only has the looks, but also takes an active role in helping Peter out with his problems, whether he's Spider-Man or not. Plus, the two together make a most outstanding team. Both share great chemistry together, and the way they both work together to take down the villain is very refreshing to watch. In this case, Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. Now, Foxx's interpretation of the villain was quite good, and he's given a unique design that's more reminiscent of more recent interpretations of this classic foe. Though I do wish the movie had given him a different backstory. Dane DeHaan's role as Harry Osborn I saw as a classic Jekyll Hyde role. As Osborn, he seemed calm and collected while also trying to deal with some inner demon inside. Now, once he became the Green Goblin, however, that man looked terrifying, and his personality just flipped on a dime. Now, if they do make a sequel, I want to see more of that guy. Now, despite its problems, there is enough good stuff in this movie to warrant at least one viewing. Yes, it is a movie where there's too much stuff going on in this one movie, but the stuff that's really good is really, really good. Namely the main characters, great dialogue, and of course, amazing action one would expect from a superhero movie. Now, I would recommend watching the first Amazing Spider-Man if you haven't done so already. The second one will assume you've seen it already, and it'll expect you to know certain things ahead of time. If you have seen the first one already, yet haven't seen the second one, I would say do so when you can. It's not a perfect Spider-Man movie, but hey, at least it ain't Spider-Man 3. Now the next movie on our agenda, based on the best-selling novel of the same name, is The Fault in Our Stars. This movie tells of a young cancer patient named Hazel Grace and a recent cancer survivor who meet at a cancer support group. Throughout the movie, they bond over subjects such as an author's unknown meaning behind one of Hazel Grace's favorite books, and the possibility of a premature death and how to accept it. Now, I can't start this review without discussing my coworkers' opinions of the movie first. Now, I remember when this movie came out to my theater some months ago, and some of my coworkers decided to go watch it on opening night. I myself decided to watch Edge of Tomorrow, but that's a whole different review right there. Now, I asked them how they liked the movie, and they said that they hated it, and that I would be better off not to watch it. So, for the longest time, I put off watching this movie, but I've recently found the chance to watch it finally. Now, what did I think of it, you're probably wondering? It wasn't actually that bad. Granted, I don't consider it one of my favorite movies, but I didn't think it was the train wreck that I had received the impression of previously. Perhaps the biggest complaint that I heard from my friends were the characters, specifically Gus, played by Ansel Elgort. From what I was given, Gus sounded like a cocky jackass who felt like he had to be on top of everything and acted like a complete tool to those around him. When I watched him, however, I did sense a bit of the cockiness coming from this character, but I didn't feel like he was acting this way just for the sake of it. To me, it felt like he had to act a bit high and mighty in order to mask his insecurities of being a cancer survivor. Some of his behavior was a bit questionable at first, but by the end, I didn't hate this person. In a bizarre way, he kind of grew on me. Now, Shailene Woodley as Hazel Grace does a phenomenal job here in this picture. Her character, as well as her delivery, really helped this picture together. She's able to give her character depth and even make her story relatable towards the audience. She could be both brutally honest and a bit tough to those around her, yet at the same time be very supportive and loving. The chemistry between Elgort and Woodley I found a bit awkward at first, yet as the film went on, I slowly began to buy their connection and even felt the joy and heartbreak between them. Now, the supporting cast also does great jobs with their roles, but the one that stood out the most for me was the crazy one himself, Willem Dafoe, as the author Peter Van Houten. Dafoe is one of those actors in which every time I see him on screen, I am just mesmerized with his performance and how he delivers it, and this one is no exception. Granted, his character is easily detestable, but I still wanted to see more of him throughout the movie. Now, story-wise, it does its job well handling the subject matter and its genre. It takes its subject matter seriously for the most part, and it keeps a nice pacing that makes easy to follow and focus. Now, there were some moments that did make me scratch my head in confusion, however. Honestly, it'd be better for you to watch these moments to see what I'm talking about. But still, for all of its flaws, this still was a serviceable film. Now, I'm not sure how well it follows the book, but I still felt satisfied with what I got. Definitely give it a watch for yourselves and see what you're in for. Oh, and by the way, I would recommend a box of tissues on standby. You'll thank me later. And folks, that is all I have for today. Tune in next time here on the Mason Cable Network as new films keep coming in. I look forward to sharing my thoughts with all of you in the near future. Until then, you have a most excellent night.
Every day, I wake up knowing that the more people I try to save, the more enemies I will make.